Maya Chun had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates spent weekends at the mall or watching movies, she could be found at the local shooting range with her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran who taught her that precision was more valuable than power. Her steady hands and sharp eyes made her a natural marksman. But in 1995, nobody expected a 19-year-old college student to request military sniper training. The recruitment office buzzed with the usual morning activity when Maya walked through the glass doors wearing her best dress and carrying a manila folder filled with her shooting competition certificates. Sergeant Rodriguez looked up from his paperwork, expecting another teenager asking about college benefits or basic training requirements. Instead, Maya placed her folder on his desk and spoke with quiet confidence. "I want to apply for sniper training," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her veins. The sergeant's eyebrows shot up as he glanced at the petite young woman standing before him. At barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, with delicate features and long black hair tied back in a neat ponytail, Maya looked more like someone who belonged in a library than on a battlefield. Rodriguez had seen hundreds of recruits come through his office, but none quite like this. "Miss, are you sure you're in the right place?" he asked, trying to suppress a smile. "Maybe you're looking for administrative positions or medical corps?" Maya's jaw tightened slightly, but she maintained her composure. She had expected this reaction. Opening her folder, she spread out certificate after certificate from shooting competitions across 3 states. Regional championships, state-level contests, and even a few national ranking certificates filled the desk space between them. "I've been shooting since I was 8 years old," Maya explained, pointing to her most recent achievement. "I placed second in the National Precision Shooting Championship last month. My average accuracy at 800 yards is 96%. Sergeant Rodriguez picked up one of the certificates, studying it more carefully. The numbers were impressive, even remarkable, but military sniping involved much more than target shooting. The physical demands, psychological pressure, and life-or-death decision-making required a different kind of person entirely. "These are very impressive scores," he admitted, setting the certificate down. "But competitive shooting and military operations are completely different worlds. The training is brutal, and, frankly, most men don't make it through." Maya had heard variations of this speech before. Her high school guidance counselor said the same thing when she expressed interest in military service. Her own father had raised similar concerns, though he eventually came around to supporting her dreams. But Maya had spent years preparing for this moment, both physically and mentally. "I understand the challenges," she replied. "I've researched the training requirements extensively. I run 5 miles every morning, I've completed wilderness survival courses, and I've been studying military tactics and ballistics for 2 years. I'm not here because I think it will be easy. I'm here because I know it's what I'm meant to do." The conviction in her voice gave Rodriguez pause. In his 15 years of military service, he had learned to recognize genuine determination versus youthful enthusiasm. Maya displayed the former. But the reality remained that women were still barred from many combat roles, and sniper training fell into a gray area that most commanders preferred to avoid. "Look, Miss Chun," Rodriguez said, pulling out a standard information packet. "I admire your dedication, but the military isn't quite ready for female snipers. There are plenty of other ways to serve your country. Have you considered military intelligence or communications?" Maya felt a familiar frustration building in her chest, the same feeling she experienced every time someone suggested she pursue a more suitable career path. She understood that Rodriguez wasn't being malicious, but the dismissal stung nonetheless. Taking a deep breath, she decided to make one final attempt. "Sergeant, what if I could demonstrate my abilities? Would you be willing to arrange a practical evaluation?" Rodriguez considered her request. The young woman's persistence was admirable, and her shooting credentials were genuinely impressive. While he couldn't authorize sniper training himself, he could potentially arrange for a demonstration that might satisfy her curiosity about military marksmanship while gently steering her toward more conventional opportunities. "Tell you what," he said after a moment. "There's a training exercise happening at Fort Davidson next week. Some of our best marksmen will be there, including instructors from the sniper school. If you're really serious about this, I might be able to get you a spot as an observer." You could see firsthand what the training involves. Maya's eyes lit up with hope. It wasn't exactly what she had requested, but it was an opportunity to prove herself. I would appreciate that very much, Sergeant. Where should I report? Rodriguez scribbled down the details on a piece of paper, still somewhat skeptical about the entire situation. He had seen many young people with big dreams and little understanding of military realities. Maya seemed different, more prepared, and determined than most. But the obstacles facing a woman in her chosen field were substantial. Report to the main gate at 0700 next Tuesday, he said, handing her the paper. Wear appropriate outdoor clothing, and bring your own rifle if you have one. This is just observation, mind you. Don't get your hopes up about participating in any actual training. Maya thanked him and gathered her certificates, her mind already racing with preparations for the upcoming week. She had one chance to make an impression, and she intended to make it count. As she walked toward the door, Rodriguez called out to her. Miss Chen, can I ask you something? Why is this so important to you? With your obvious intelligence and skills, you could succeed in any number of careers. Why choose one of the most dangerous and demanding jobs in the military? Maya paused at the door, considering how to articulate feelings she had carried for years. The truth was complex, involving her grandfather's war stories, her natural abilities, and a deep-seated desire to serve her country in the most meaningful way possible. My grandfather used to tell me that some people are called to protect others, she said finally. He said that talent without purpose is just wasted potential. I believe I have a gift for precision shooting, and I want to use that gift to make a difference. If I can save lives by being the person who takes the difficult shots, then that's what I need to do. Rodriguez nodded slowly, recognizing the sincerity in her words. He had heard similar sentiments from some of the finest soldiers he had known. As Maya left the recruitment office, he found himself hoping she would find a way to achieve her goals, despite the many obstacles that lay ahead. The drive to Fort Davidson took Maya through rolling hills and dense forests that reminded her of the hunting trips she had taken with her grandfather. She arrived 30 minutes early, her grandfather's custom rifle carefully secured in its case along with her shooting gear. The morning air was crisp, and she could see her breath as she approached the main gate where 2 guards checked her identification and visitor's pass. Staff Sergeant Williams met her at the gate, a weathered man in his 40s with the kind of 1,000-yard stare that came from years of military service. He looked at Maya with barely concealed skepticism, clearly wondering what a young civilian woman was doing at a military marksmanship training exercise. You're the shooting enthusiast Rodriguez told me about? Williams asked, his tone suggesting he had better things to do with his morning. Yes, Sergeant. Maya Chun. I appreciate the opportunity to observe today's training. Williams grunted and motioned for her to follow him toward a convoy of military vehicles. Just stay out of the way and don't ask too many questions. This isn't a tourist attraction. Maya nodded and climbed into the back of a transport truck along with several soldiers who eyed her with curiosity. The ride to the training area was bumpy and largely silent, with the soldiers focused on their own preparations for the day's exercises. The training ground was a sprawling complex of hills, valleys, and carefully constructed obstacles designed to simulate real combat conditions. Maya could see targets positioned at various distances, some obvious and others cleverly camouflaged among the natural terrain. Several shooting positions had been prepared at different elevations, each offering unique challenges for the marksman. Today's exercise involves precision shooting at ranges from 400 to 1,200 yards, Williams explained as they gathered around a large topographical map. Each shooter gets 3 attempts at 5 different targets. Wind conditions are moderate but variable, and we've got some atmospheric disturbance that should make things interesting. Maya listened intently as Williams described the course of fire, mentally calculating the ballistic challenges each position would present. She noticed several soldiers glancing at her with amusement, clearly entertained by the idea of a civilian observer who thought she understood military marksmanship. The first group of shooters took their positions, and Maya watched through binoculars as they engaged targets at progressively longer ranges. The soldiers were skilled, but she noticed several missed shots that seemed to result from poor wind reading or inadequate compensation for the morning's changing light conditions. Not bad for Army standards, commented Corporal Jackson, one of the younger soldiers standing near Maya. Though I bet you've never seen shooting like this before. Maya smiled politely, but didn't respond immediately. She had indeed seen shooting at this level, and, in many cases, she had performed better herself. But she understood that proving herself would require more than words. After the first group completed their course of fire, Williams called for a break. Maya used the opportunity to study the targets more carefully, noting the wind flags and observing the subtle environmental factors that would affect bullet trajectory. She also noticed that one particular target, positioned at nearly 1,000 yards on a hillside, had remained unhit throughout the morning's exercise. That's Target 7, explained Sergeant Martinez, following Maya's gaze. It's positioned in a tricky spot with swirling winds and a deceptive range estimation. Most shooters either overshoot or get caught by the wind drift. Maya nodded, already formulating a strategy for engaging that particular target. The position required accounting for an uphill angle, crosswind that shifted direction mid-flight, and a target that was partially obscured by natural vegetation. As the second group prepared for their turn, Williams noticed Maya's intense focus on the course. "See something interesting out there?" he asked with slight sarcasm. "The wind patterns are complex," Maya observed. "The flags at 400 yards show a left-to-right drift, but the vegetation at 800 yards suggests the wind shifts direction. And that far target on the hillside appears to be in a microclimate that's different from the valley floor." Williams raised an eyebrow, surprised by the accuracy of her observations. These were exactly the kinds of details that separated good shooters from exceptional ones, and most civilians wouldn't notice such subtleties. The second group's performance was similar to the first, with solid shooting at the closer ranges, but increasing difficulty as the distances extended. Target 7 remained untouched, and Maya could see frustration growing among the soldiers who prided themselves on their marksmanship abilities. During the lunch break, Corporal Jackson approached Maya with renewed curiosity. "You seem to know quite a bit about long-range shooting. Ever actually done any yourself?" Maya saw an opportunity to build some credibility without appearing boastful. "I've done some competitive shooting. Nothing as challenging as military conditions, of course, but enough to appreciate the skill level you're demonstrating today." "What kind of ranges?" asked Sergeant Martinez, joining the conversation. "Mostly 600 to 1,000 yards in competition settings. My personal best is a consistent group at 1,200 yards, but that was under ideal conditions with unlimited preparation time." The soldiers exchanged glances, their skepticism now mixed with genuine interest. Shooting at 1,200 yards required serious skill and equipment, not the kind of hobby-level marksmanship they had initially assumed Maya possessed. After lunch, Williams announced that the afternoon session would include some informal challenges, including an opportunity for anyone to attempt the problematic Target 7 that had frustrated the morning's shooters. Maya felt her pulse quicken as she realized this might be the chance she had been hoping for. "I don't suppose your observer would like to try her hand at some real shooting?" Williams asked, his tone suggesting he expected Maya to politely decline. Maya looked around at the assembled soldiers, all of whom were now watching her with varying degrees of amusement and curiosity. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the opportunity to demonstrate that her skills were more than theoretical knowledge. "If you're offering, I'd be honored to attempt it," Maya replied calmly. Williams seemed momentarily taken aback by her acceptance, but he had made the offer and couldn't back down without losing face. "All right then. You can use military equipment or bring your own if you prefer." Maya retrieved her rifle case and began assembling her grandfather's custom weapon, a precision instrument that had been carefully modified for long-range accuracy. The soldiers gathered around to examine the rifle, their expressions shifting from amusement to professional interest as they recognized the quality of the equipment and the obvious care with which it had been maintained. "That's some serious hardware," admitted Martinez. "Custom barrel, match-grade ammunition, precision optics. You weren't kidding about taking this seriously." Maya finished her preparations and moved to the firing position closest to Target 7. She settled into a prone position behind the rifle, adjusting her scope and taking careful note of the environmental conditions. The wind had shifted slightly since morning, and The afternoon light created different shadows and contrast on the hillside target. For several minutes, Maya simply observed, watching the wind flags and studying the target through her scope. The soldiers initially expected her to shoot quickly, but as the minutes passed, they began to realize she was conducting the same careful preparation they had witnessed from their best marksmen. Finally, Maya chambered a round and settled into her final firing position. The range fell silent as everyone waited to see whether the civilian observer could succeed where experienced military marksmen had failed throughout the morning. Maya's breathing slowed to a steady rhythm as she aligned her crosshairs with the distant target. Through her scope, she could see the small steel plate positioned among the natural vegetation, partially hidden by shadows that had shifted throughout the day. The target appeared deceptively simple, but she understood why it had frustrated the morning's shooters. The wind at her position felt gentle and consistent, but she had observed the vegetation at different ranges responding to varying air currents. At 600 yards, the grass bent steadily to the right, but at 800 yards, the tree branches swayed in a different pattern entirely. The target itself sat in what appeared to be a pocket of calmer air, protected by the hillside's natural contours. She made minute adjustments to her scope, compensating not only for the distance and elevation change, but also for the complex wind pattern she had identified. Her grandfather had taught her that successful long-range shooting required patience and observation more than raw marksmanship skills. Maya had spent years learning to read environmental conditions, and now that knowledge would be put to the ultimate test. The soldiers watching from behind held their breath as Maya's finger moved to the trigger. She had fired thousands of rounds in competition, but this shot carried different weight. This wasn't about winning a trophy or proving a point to skeptical family members. This was about earning respect from professionals who had dedicated their careers to precision marksmanship. The rifle's report echoed across the valley, and Maya immediately worked the bolt to chamber another round while maintaining her sight picture. Through her scope, she could see the target clearly, but at nearly 1,000 yards, it was impossible to determine shot placement with certainty. Spotting scope shows a hit, called out Sergeant Martinez from his observation position. Looks like it's right in the center. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the assembled soldiers, but Maya remained focused on the target. One successful shot could be attributed to luck, but consistent accuracy would demonstrate genuine skill. She adjusted her point of aim slightly, accounting for the barrel heating and minute changes in wind direction. Her second shot followed 10 seconds later, and again the spotting scope confirmed a hit. This time, the soldiers' reactions were more pronounced, with several exchanging glances of genuine surprise. Maya chambered her third and final round, determined to complete a perfect string. The last shot felt different as it left the barrel, and Maya instinctively knew it was her best of the three. The spotting scope confirmed what she suspected. 3 shots clustered tightly in the center of a target that had remained untouched all morning. As Maya cleared her rifle and stood up from the firing position, the assembled soldiers erupted in spontaneous applause. Even Sergeant Williams, who had been skeptical from the beginning, nodded with obvious approval. That was exceptional shooting, Williams admitted, walking over to examine Maya's rifle more closely. I've seen experienced snipers struggle with that target all week. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction, but tried to remain modest in her response. Thank you, Sergeant. I had the advantage of observing the conditions all morning while your men were concentrating on their own shooting. Corporal Jackson shook his head in amazement. Don't sell yourself short. That target has been giving us trouble for months. The wind patterns around that hill are notorious for messing with even our best shooters. As word of Maya's performance spread through the training area, more soldiers gathered to see the civilian who had succeeded where they had struggled. Maya found herself answering questions about her training, equipment, and shooting background, and she noticed the tone of the conversations had shifted dramatically from the morning skepticism. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Asked Private Williams, a young soldier who had been among the morning's shooters. Maya told them about her grandfather's patient instruction, years of competitive shooting, and countless hours spent studying ballistics and environmental factors. She explained how her grandfather had insisted that precision shooting was as much mental as physical, requiring discipline, patience, and careful observation. He always said that anyone can learn to pull a trigger, but reading conditions and making accurate predictions about bullet flight separated casual shooters from true marksmen, Maya explained. Sergeant Martinez nodded in understanding. Your grandfather sounds like he knew what he was talking about. Military sniping requires exactly those skills, plus the ability to perform under pressure and make life-or-death decisions. As the afternoon training session continued, Maya was invited to attempt other challenges on the course. She consistently performed at a level that impressed even the most experienced soldiers present, demonstrating not only accurate shooting but also quick adaptation to changing conditions and unfamiliar shooting positions. During a break between exercises, Staff Sergeant Williams approached Maya with a more serious expression than she had seen from him all day. Miss Chun, I need to ask you something honestly. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish here? Your shooting is genuinely impressive, but women aren't currently eligible for sniper training in the military. Are you looking for validation, or do you have some larger goal in mind? Maya appreciated his direct approach and decided to match his honesty with her own. Sergeant, I want to serve my country in the capacity where I can make the most difference. I believe my skills could save lives if properly applied, and I'm hoping to find a way to make that happen, even if it means challenging existing policies. Williams considered her response carefully. He had seen enough military politics to understand the obstacles Maya would face, but he had also witnessed shooting that belonged in the top tier of military marksmen. Her performance raised questions about whether current exclusion policies were serving the military's best interests. There's someone you should meet, Williams said finally. General Harrison is observing training exercises at the command post today. He's always interested in exceptional marksmanship, and he's got enough influence to potentially open doors that would normally remain closed. Maya felt her heart rate increase at the suggestion. Meeting a general was far beyond what she had hoped for when Rodriguez arranged her observation visit. Do you think he would be willing to speak with me? Williams glanced toward the command post, a temporary structure overlooking the training area. Let me make some inquiries. Your performance today has certainly generated enough attention to warrant his interest. As Williams walked toward the command post, Maya found herself surrounded by soldiers eager to discuss shooting techniques and share their own experiences with challenging targets. The atmosphere had completely transformed from the morning's polite skepticism to genuine professional respect. I've been shooting for 8 years, admitted Corporal Jackson, and I've never seen anyone read conditions that accurately on their first attempt at our course. Maya smiled at the compliment, but remained focused on the larger opportunity that might be developing. If General Harrison was indeed willing to meet with her, it could represent the breakthrough she had been seeking. She had proven her shooting abilities beyond any reasonable doubt, but translating that demonstration into actual military opportunities would require navigating complex institutional barriers that had never been successfully challenged by someone in her position. General Robert Harrison stood behind the observation window of the command post, studying the afternoon's training activities through powerful binoculars. At 58 years old, he had spent nearly 4 decades in military service, including multiple deployments where precision marksmanship had meant the difference between mission success and failure. He had built his reputation on recognizing exceptional talent and finding ways to maximize its potential for military advantage. When Staff Sergeant Williams approached the command post requesting an audience, Harrison initially dismissed the request. He had limited time between official meetings, and entertaining conversations with civilian observers wasn't typically productive use of his schedule. However, Williams' description of Maya's shooting performance captured his attention immediately. You're telling me a 19-year-old college student just succeeded where your best marksmen have been failing? Harrison asked, lowering his binoculars to focus on Williams. Yes, sir. 3 shots, 3 hits, center target at 987 yards in variable wind conditions. And that was just her warm-up performance. She's been consistently outperforming our soldiers all afternoon. Harrison had heard similar claims before, usually from enthusiastic subordinates who confused lucky shots with genuine skill. But Williams was a seasoned instructor with 15 years of training experience, not someone given to exaggeration or easily impressed by civilian shooters. What's her background? Harrison inquired. moving to examine the training records Williams had brought. Competitive shooter since childhood, trained by a Vietnam veteran grandfather, extensive competition history with documented accuracy at extended ranges. She's requesting military sniper training, sir. Harrison paused at that information. Women were barred from most combat roles, including sniper positions, based on long-standing military policy that few had seriously challenged. The general had his own opinions about those restrictions, formed through years of observing capable female soldiers who were limited by regulations rather than ability. Bring her up here, Harrison decided. I want to speak with her personally. Williams returned to the training area where Maya was cleaning her rifle and preparing for the ride back to town. The invitation to meet with General Harrison sent a mixture of excitement and nervousness through her entire body. She had hoped to make a good impression on the training staff, but speaking directly with a general exceeded her wildest expectations. Maya quickly secured her equipment and followed Williams up the hill toward the command post, her mind racing with potential conversation topics and questions she might face. She had read about General Harrison during her military research, knowing him as a decorated combat veteran with a reputation for innovative thinking and results-oriented leadership. The command post interior was spartanly furnished but equipped with sophisticated communication gear and detailed maps of the training area. General Harrison stood near a large window overlooking the shooting ranges, his bearing and presence immediately commanding Maya's attention. Miss Chun, I understand you've been impressive on our ranges today, Harrison said, turning to face her with a direct gaze that seemed to evaluate everything about her in an instant. Thank you, sir. The training staff provided an excellent opportunity to test my abilities under challenging conditions. Harrison appreciated her composed response. Many civilians became nervous or overly talkative when meeting senior officers, but Maya demonstrated the kind of calm confidence he associated with professional soldiers. Staff Sergeant Williams tells me you're interested in sniper training. You understand that's not currently an option for women in the military. Maya had prepared for this question throughout her drive to Fort Davidson. Yes, sir, I'm aware of current policies. But I believe my demonstrated abilities warrant consideration for alternative pathways to serve in a capacity where precision marksmanship could make a meaningful contribution. Alternative pathways, Harrison repeated thoughtfully. What specifically do you have in mind? Maya took a deep breath, knowing her next words could determine whether this conversation led anywhere productive. Sir, I've researched specialized units that operate under different classification systems. I understand there are situations where exceptional capabilities might justify policy exceptions, particularly for roles that emphasize technical skills over traditional combat operations. Harrison was impressed by her knowledge of military organizational structures. Maya had clearly done extensive research beyond casual interest in sniper training. She understood the institutional complexities involved in her request and had given serious thought to potential solutions. Your shooting is exceptional, Harrison acknowledged. But military sniping involves much more than marksmanship. Physical demands, psychological pressure, life or death decision making under extreme stress. Have you given serious thought to those aspects? Yes, sir. I've completed wilderness survival training, endurance conditioning, and psychological evaluations through civilian programs designed to simulate high-stress conditions. I understand that accurate shooting is just one component of effective military precision marksmanship. Harrison walked to his desk and retrieved a file folder, glancing through several documents before looking back at Maya. Miss Chun, there's a classified training program that might interest you. It's designed to evaluate unconventional approaches to precision marksmanship in specialized operational contexts. Maya felt her heart racing but maintained her composed exterior. A classified training program represented exactly the kind of opportunity she had hoped might exist but never dared assume she could access. The program is highly selective and extremely demanding, Harrison continued. Candidates face physical, mental, and technical challenges that exceed standard military training in every category. Most qualified applicants don't complete the initial evaluation phase. I would welcome the opportunity to attempt the program, sir. Harrison studied her carefully, evaluating not just her words but her demeanor and apparent commitment level. He had recommended candidates for special programs before, and his reputation depended on accurate assessment of potential success rates. There's one particular challenge we use to evaluate candidates, Harrison said, moving toward the window overlooking the training range. It's not part of today's standard exercises, but if you're genuinely interested in pursuing this conversation, you'll need to demonstrate capabilities beyond what you've shown so far. Maya followed his gaze toward the range, wondering what additional tests might be required. She had performed well on every challenge presented so far, but clearly General Harrison had something more demanding in mind. Harrison pointed toward a distant hillside where Maya could barely make out a small target positioned at what appeared to be an extreme range. That target is positioned at 1,847 yards with a 400-foot elevation change and exposure to wind patterns from 3 different directions. We call it the impossible shot because atmospheric conditions make accurate prediction nearly hopeless. Maya studied the target through the command post's mounted spotting scope, immediately recognizing the complexity of the challenge. The distance alone pushed the limits of her equipment's capabilities, and the environmental factors would require calculations beyond anything she had attempted in competition. "How many attempts do candidates typically receive?" she asked. Harrison smiled slightly, appreciating her tactical approach to the question. "One shot. One opportunity to demonstrate whether you possess the combination of technical knowledge, environmental reading ability, and mental composure required for our program." Maya felt a surge of adrenaline at the challenge. This was beyond anything she had prepared for, but it represented exactly the kind of test that could definitively prove her capabilities. If she succeeded, it would open doors that might otherwise remain permanently closed. If she failed, her military aspirations would likely end permanently. "When would you like me to attempt the shot, sir?" Harrison checked his watch, noting that daylight was beginning to fade and wind conditions were becoming increasingly unpredictable. "Now, Miss Chun, if you're serious about pursuing this opportunity, there's no better time than the present." Maya descended from the command post with General Harrison and several staff members, her rifle case feeling heavier than usual as the magnitude of the challenge ahead settled in her mind. The target at 1,847 yards represented the absolute limit of her equipment's capability and would require perfect execution of every skill her grandfather had taught her over the years. The shooting position had been prepared at the edge of a ridge that provided an unobstructed view across the valley to the distant hillside target. Maya could see the small steel plate through her scope, but at nearly 2 kilometers, it appeared as little more than a speck against the natural background. Atmospheric distortion made the target waver and dance, creating additional uncertainty about its exact position. Word of the impossible shot attempt had spread throughout the training area, and soldiers gathered at observation points to witness what many considered a futile exercise. The target had earned its reputation through months of failed attempts by experienced military marksmen, including several decorated snipers who had tried and missed under similar conditions. Maya began her preparation methodically, just as her grandfather had taught her during their hunting expeditions. She studied the terrain between her position and the target, noting elevation changes, vegetation patterns, and potential wind corridors that might affect bullet trajectory. The late afternoon light created challenging visibility conditions, with shadows beginning to lengthen across the valley floor. Using a handheld weather meter, Maya recorded atmospheric pressure, temperature, and humidity readings that would influence her ballistic calculations. The wind presented the greatest challenge, varying in direction and intensity at different ranges along the bullet's nearly 2-kilometer flight path. General Harrison observed Maya's preparation process with growing interest. Her systematic approach demonstrated professional-level understanding of long-range shooting principles, and her patience suggested the kind of mental discipline required for high-pressure situations. "What's your assessment of the wind conditions?" Harrison asked, genuinely curious about Maya's tactical analysis. Maya pointed toward various reference points across the valley, explaining her observations in technical detail. "The surface wind here is approximately 8 miles per hour from the southwest, but the vegetation at 800 yards indicates a shift to westerly direction with increased velocity. The target area appears to be in a partial wind shadow created by the hillside contour, but there's likely some vertical air movement due to thermal effects from the afternoon heating. Harrison nodded approvingly. Maya's analysis matched the assessments provided by his most experienced instructors, demonstrating that her environmental reading skills were as advanced as her marksmanship abilities. Maya made final adjustments to her scope, setting elevation and windage corrections based on her calculations. The mathematical complexity of the shot required accounting for factors that most shooters never encountered, including Coriolis effect from the Earth's rotation and the significant bullet drop that occurred over such an extended range. Settling into her prone position behind the rifle, Maya controlled her breathing and heart rate using techniques she had practiced thousands of times in competition. But this shot carried weight beyond any contest she had entered. Success would validate years of preparation and potentially open opportunities that had never existed for someone in her position. Through her scope, the target appeared to float and shift with atmospheric disturbance, making precise aim point selection extremely challenging. Maya waited for a moment of relative stability, her finger resting lightly on the trigger as she made final micro-adjustments to her sight picture. The valley fell completely silent as observers recognized that Maya was entering her final firing sequence. Even the wind seemed to pause, creating a moment of unusual calm that experienced shooters recognized as an ideal opportunity for a difficult shot. Maya's breathing stopped completely as she applied steady pressure to the trigger. The rifle's report echoed across the valley like a thunderclap, and she immediately cycled the bolt while maintaining her sight picture to observe bullet impact through her scope. The projectile's flight time at that range exceeded 2 full seconds, creating an eternity of suspense for everyone watching. Maya tracked the bullet's arc through her scope, but at such extreme distance, visual confirmation of impact was impossible without supporting observation equipment. "Spotting scope indicates a hit," announced Sergeant Martinez from his observation position, his voice betraying surprise despite years of professional composure. General Harrison raised his binoculars toward the target, confirming what the spotting scope had detected. The steel plate showed clear evidence of bullet impact, and the shot placement appeared to be within inches of the target's center. The assembled soldiers erupted in spontaneous cheering, recognizing that they had witnessed something genuinely extraordinary. The impossible shot had finally been conquered, and by someone they had initially dismissed as an enthusiastic civilian with unrealistic military aspirations. Maya remained in her firing position for several seconds, processing what had just occurred. The successful shot represented the culmination of years of training and preparation, but, more importantly, it had demonstrated her capabilities in the most definitive way possible. General Harrison approached Maya as she cleared her rifle and stood up from the shooting position. His expression had shifted from professional interest to genuine respect, and Maya could sense that their conversation was entering new territory. "Miss Chun, that was an exceptional demonstration," Harrison said, extending his hand in congratulation. "You've just accomplished something that has eluded some of our most experienced marksmen." "Thank you, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity to attempt the shot." Harrison smiled at her continued modesty despite having achieved something remarkable. "I think we need to discuss that classified training program in more detail. Your performance today suggests you might be exactly the kind of candidate we've been seeking." As they walked back toward the command post, Harrison explained that the program operated under special classification that allowed for policy exceptions based on demonstrated exceptional capabilities. Maya would face additional evaluations and training phases that went far beyond marksmanship, but her shooting performance had earned her serious consideration for opportunities that few people ever accessed. The program designation is classified, but the soldiers call it Black Talon, Harrison revealed. It's designed to develop precision marksmen for specialized operations that require capabilities beyond conventional military training. Maya felt a surge of excitement at finally hearing concrete details about a pathway toward her military service goals. The name Black Talon suggested the kind of elite program she had hoped existed but never dared assume she might access. "What would be the next steps in the evaluation process, sir?" Harrison outlined a series of additional assessments that would test her physical conditioning, psychological resilience, tactical knowledge, and decision-making abilities under stress. The process would be demanding and might ultimately prove that shooting ability alone wasn't sufficient for program requirements. Are you prepared to commit to that level of evaluation, understanding that success isn't guaranteed even with your demonstrated marksmanship abilities? Maya considered the question carefully, knowing that her response would influence whether General Harrison decided to sponsor her candidacy for the program. She had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of opportunity, and despite the uncertainties ahead, she felt ready to face whatever challenges the evaluation process might present. Yes, sir. I'm prepared to attempt the full evaluation process. General Harrison nodded, apparently satisfied with her commitment level. As they reached the command post, he made arrangements for Maya to receive detailed information about reporting procedures and preparation requirements for the Black Talon program evaluation. Walking back to her vehicle that evening, Maya reflected on how completely the day had exceeded her expectations. She had arrived hoping to demonstrate her shooting abilities to military professionals, but she was leaving with an invitation to pursue opportunities that could fulfill her deepest aspirations for military service. The mockery and skepticism she had faced throughout her journey toward military service had been replaced by professional respect and genuine opportunities. As she drove home through the darkening countryside, Maya understood that her real challenges were just beginning. But, for the first time, she had confidence that her goals might actually be achievable.